Okay, so syzygy, anima and animus. I think this will talk a lot more about the projection making factor, right? Because last time what we talked about was if, let's say, you have a certain quality about yourself that you're unconscious of, then you often project that quality onto other people, right? Like that quality is trying to become conscious, and the way it wants to become conscious is by getting projected onto other people first. So, for example, you might be a person who doesn't have much of a discipline, and your life is in shambles because you don't have a lot of discipline. But you're not conscious of that fact yet. You don't really realize that your life is horrible right now, mainly because in your adulthood you didn't have much of a discipline. And then you come across somebody who doesn't have much of a discipline, and then you really hate that fact about them. You just, it genuinely pisses you off that this person doesn't have a discipline, right? So that's what's happening, is that you actually don't hate that person, you don't hate the quality in them, you have that quality in yourself. That quality is the reason why your life is in absolute ruins right now. But you're not aware of that, you're not conscious of that, right? So you can backtrace it, so to speak. So if you hate something about someone, you usually should reflect, maybe I have that quality in me. Anyway, where do these projections come from, right? Like, who is responsible for creating these projections? I think this chapter is going to talk about that. So let's start reading a bit. What then, I'm starting here. What then is this projection making factor? The East calls it the spinning woman, Maya, who creates illusion by her dancing. Had we not long since known it from the symbolism of dreams, this hint from the Orient would put us on the right track. The enveloping, embracing, and devouring element points unmistakably to the mother, that is, to the son's relation to the real mother, to her imago, and to the woman who is to become a mother for him. His eros is passive like a child's. He hopes to be caught, sucked in, enveloped, and devoured. He seeks, as it were, the protecting, nourishing, charming circle of the mother, the condition of the infant, released from every care in which the outside world bends over him and even forces happiness upon him. No wonder the real world vanishes from sight. I mean, this is crazy. This first paragraph is already like insane, right? What's happening, I think, is that this projection making factor is like a spinning woman. It spins and spins and builds so many projections and illusions, that at some point, look what Jung is saying, no wonder the real world vanishes from sight. I mean, this guy isn't even looking at the real world anymore. He refuses to acknowledge what is true. He refuses to take responsibility, right? Look, he hopes to be caught, sucked in, enveloped, and devoured, like he's a mama's boy, so to speak. And there is a lot of men like that, I think, in this day and age. Hell, even I cannot claim that I myself am free of it, though I think I am, but who knows, right? Anyway, let's look further. If this situation is dramatized, as the unconscious usually dramatizes it, right? This is really important. The unconscious always dramatizes things. So like that's something we have to keep in mind. Then there appears before you on the psychological stage a man living regressively, seeking his childhood, and his mother fleeing from the cold, cruel world which denies him understanding. Often a mother appears beside him who apparently shows not the slightest concern that her little son should become a man, but who, with tireless and self-immolating effort, neglects nothing that might hinder him from growing up and marrying. you behold the secret conspiracy between mother and son, and how each helps the other to betray life. Yeah, damn, hold up. What? Often a mother appears beside him who apparently shows not the slightest concern that her little son should become a man, but who with tireless and self-immolating effort neglects nothing that might hinder him from growing up and marrying. You behold the secret conspiracy between mother and son, and how each helps the other betray life. Right? This is, I think, a very common situation, a very common problem, I would say. Right? Look, there appears before you on the psychological stage a man living regressively, seeking his childhood and his mother. This, I think, is not just about men or women. A lot of times, like for example, I live in Tashkent now, in Uzbekistan, and sometimes I talk to some girls here, and what they say is, can this guy, right, like there is this guy I like, can he take care of me the same way my father would take care of me? Right? Can he do what my father does? My father does so and so for me. I'm comfortable living with him. Can my boyfriend, can my husband do it? And I think that's a fundamentally problematic way of looking at the world. Right? Like your husband, your boyfriend is not supposed to be your father. In every man, you should not be seeking your father. And it's the same thing for men too. Like whenever you look at a girl, don't seek your mother. Don't say, oh, I want a girl who's going to take care of me, who's going to cook for me, who's going to clean this, who's going to be, so to speak, that mother figure. No girl wants to be a mother for you, I think. And no guy wants to be a father for you. So, I think it is a fundamentally deep problem in our society that both men and women are somehow unconsciously attached to their parents, and they're seeking their parents in every potential life partner that comes their way. It's messed up, but I think that's what Jung is saying, right? Seeking his childhood and his mother. I mean, what the hell, right? And I hate that. I hate that when a woman starts comparing you to her father, and your father is 60-something, I'm 20-something. I mean, what is even going on? Where does the guilt lie? Let's start reading. Where does the guilt lie? With the mother or with the son? Probably with both. The unsatisfied longing of the son for life and the world ought to be taken seriously. There is in him a desire to touch reality, to embrace the earth and fructify the field of the world. But he makes no more than a series of fitful starts, for his initiative as well as his staying power are crippled by the secret memory that the world and happiness may be had as a gift from the mother. I mean, this is the real issue, right? Look. But he makes no more than a series of fitful starts, for his initiative as well as his staying power are crippled by the secret memory that the world and happiness may be had as a gift. Right? This is like a woman, for example, looking at the man and just hoping that that man will do everything for you and that you will sort of have everything as a gift. Or the same thing as a man looking at a woman, right? Seeking his mother in that woman and hoping that somehow you can ignore the reality, you can ignore self-growth, you can ignore your own problems and just hope that that woman is going to solve your problems, which you won't, right? No human being is going to solve your problems for you. The fragment of the world. Look, the fragment of the world, which he, like every man, must encounter again and again, is never quite the right one. Since it does not fall into his lap, does not meet his halfway, but remains resistant, has to be conquered, submits only to force. It makes demands on the masculinity of a man, on his ardor, above all on his courage and resolution when it comes to throwing his whole being into the scales. For this, he would need a faithless eros, one capable of forgetting his mother and undergoing the pain of relinquishing the first love of his life. This is insane. What the hell? The mother, foreseeing this danger, has carefully inculcated into him the virtues of faithfulness, devotion, loyalty, so as to protect him from the moral disruption which is the risk of every life adventure. He has learned these lessons only too well and remains true to his mother. This naturally causes her the deepest anxiety when, to her greater glory, he turns out to be a homosexual, for example. Wait, what? This naturally causes her the deepest anxiety when, to her greater glory, he turns out to be homosexual, for example. And at the same time, affords her an unconscious satisfaction that is positively mythological. For in the relationship now reigning between them, there is consummated the immemorial and most sacred archetype of the marriage of mother and son. What, after all, has commonplace reality to offer, with its registry offices, pay envelopes, and monthly rent, that could outweigh the mystic awe of the Hieros Gamos, or the star-crowned woman whom the dragon pursues, or the pious obscurities veiling the marriage of the Lamb? Damn. One thing I would say though is, living in Uzbekistan, and in Central Asia, I think in general, there is a strange relationship that men have with their mother. Maybe people have noticed it. Like, mothers are way too possessive of their children. When a guy marries a girl, that girl is usually gonna go through a lot of difficulties dealing with his mother. Like, usually you would assume that when a man and a woman marry, the mother of the man will leave them alone, right? Like, go through life adventures on your own, do your own thing. But no, here, like, the mothers have like an insane control over the entire situation, and they're always watching the woman. Is she gonna wake up in the morning? Is she gonna clean? Is she gonna do her wifely duties? And I think it's a bit insane. I think some of what Jung is saying here is that there is a strange mythological relationship between a man and his mother that is very bad, because it often ignores reality, and mothers are too protective. That's what I don't like. This is something that Goethe says a lot too, I think, is that sometimes he says, I don't know if it was Goethe or it was Jung, somebody said that sometimes the parents are trying to protect their children and they end up protecting them too much, and it ends up hurting the children, because the children will not end up growing. They will not end up getting detached from the mother, because, as Jung is saying, every life adventure, right? Every life adventure comes with a certain risk of moral disruption. And some mothers are not willing to accept that. I think as a parent, you need to allow your children to grow on their own. Don't like hold them by the neck. And I think in Central Asia, especially, mothers and men, their sons have very strangely close relationship, which is slightly disturbing. Anyway, this myth, better than any other, illustrates the nature of the collective unconscious. At this level, the mother is both old and young, Demeter and Persephone, and the son is spouse and sleeping suckling rolled into one. Yeah, the imperfections of real life, with its laborious adaptations and manifold disappointments, naturally cannot compete with such a state of indescribable fulfillment. In the case of the son, the projection-making factor is identical with the mother imago, and this is consequently taken to be the real mother. The projection can only be dissolved. The projection can only be dissolved when the son sees that in the realm of his psyche there is an imago not only of the mother, but of the daughter, the sister, the beloved, the heavenly goddess, and the chthonic bobo. This chthonic means underworldly. Anything that is like in the underworld in hell, it's called this chthonic, I think. Every mother and every beloved is forced to become the carrier and embodiment of this omnipresent and ageless image, which corresponds to the deepest reality in a man. It belongs to him, this perilous, right, dangerous image of a woman. She stands for the loyalty in which the interests of life, what? She stands for the loyalty which in the interests of life he must sometimes forego. She is the much needed compensation for the risk, struggle, sacrifices that all end in disappointment. She is the solace for all the bitterness of life, and at the same time she is the great illusionist, the seductress who draws him into life with her Maya, and not only into life's reasonable and useful aspects, but into its frightful paradoxes and ambivalences where good and evil, success and ruin, hope and despair counterbalance one another. Because she is his greatest danger, she demands from a man his greatest, and if he has it in him, she will receive it. The image is my lady soul, as Spidler calls her. I've suggested instead the term anima, as indicating something specific for which the expression soul is too general and too vague. The empirical reality summed up under the concept of the anima forms an extremely dramatic content of the unconscious. The empirical reality summed up under the concept of the anima forms an extremely dramatic content of the unconscious. It is possible to describe this content in rational, scientific language, but in this way one entirely fails to express its living character. Therefore, in describing the living process of the psyche, I deliberately and consciously give preference to a dramatic mythological way of thinking and speaking, because this is not only more expressive, but also more exact than an abstract scientific terminology, which is wont to toy with the notion that its theoretic formulations may one fine day be resolved into algebraic equations. Okay, so to describe certain aspects of the psyche, science is not enough. We have to use mythology, right? Because mythology is like a living thing. If you think about where mythology came from, it came from the unconscious. Mythology came from the unconscious. It's a projection of certain unconscious processes. Therefore, right? If you backtrace it to where it came from, then you will know that it is the perfect language to talk about certain unconscious processes. This is the language that the unconscious itself is using. So instead of using our language, why don't we use the language of the unconscious instead? The projection-making factor is the anima, or rather the unconscious as represented by the anima. Whenever she appears in dreams, visions, and fantasies, she takes on personified form, and thus demonstrating that the factor she embodies possesses all the outstanding characteristics of a feminine being. Look. Whenever she appears in dreams, visions, and fantasies, she takes on personified form, thus demonstrating that the factor she embodies possesses all the outstanding characteristics of a feminine being. She is not an invention of the conscious, but a spontaneous product of the unconscious. Damn. Nor is she a substitute figure for the mother. On the contrary, there is every likelihood that the numerous qualities which make the mother imago so dangerous and powerful derive from the collective archetype of the anima, which is incarnated anew in every male child. Here's what's happening here. When a child is born, when a man is born, right, before he even opens his eyes and looks at his mother, there is in his psyche an image of a great mother. Do you see what I'm saying? Like before, like I just got born, before I even opened my eyes to see who the real mother is, there is already a predisposed, so to speak, figure of an ideal woman, so to speak, of a great mother with all the tremendous qualities of a woman. That image of a woman is already in his psyche. That image is not something that he consciously created. That image is a product, a spontaneous product of the unconscious, right? He inherits that image. And so when he looks at his mother for the first time, he's looking at her not for who she really is, but he's looking at her through the lens of the image of the great mother. Right? Like a lot of times, for example, and it's the same thing with girls too, like when a girl, or like when, let's say, a man is born, like when he's very young, he thinks that his mother is like a great hero. He thinks that his mother can do everything. Whenever he has a problem, he comes to his mother, right? Like his mother is almost like a mythological figure for him. And that mythological figure comes from the fact that anima, the feminine part of the psyche of man, is in itself mythological in character. Right? Like he projects the qualities of anima onto his own mother. His own mother is the first victim of this projection-making factor. Like to this day, for example, when a man looks at a woman and says, oh, she should be like this, she should be like that, I want this in a woman, I want that in a woman, to some extent, he is projecting the qualities of the anima onto her. Right? That's what Jung is saying, that when he says that you want to go back to that sweet childhood, he's saying that you are really looking for the anima. You are really looking for the great mother. That image that you had before you were even born, that's what you are really looking for. You looked for that in your mother. Sometimes you find it in your mother. When I say you find it in your mother, I mean that your mother plays her role so well that this projection that you projected onto her, that projection doesn't break. Sometimes a woman plays that role so well that you can project the qualities of the great mother onto her. But sometimes she will do some things that will break the projection, and then you might get the ick and move on. Since the anima is an archetype that is found in men, it is reasonable to suppose that an equivalent archetype must be present in women. Just as the man is compensated by a feminine element, so women is compensated by a masculine one. I do not, however, wish this argument to give the impression that these compensatory relationships were arrived at by deduction. On the contrary, long and varied experience was needed in order to grasp the nature of anima and animus empirically. Whenever we have to say about these archetypes, therefore, is either directly verifiable or at least rendered probable by the facts. At the same time, I am fully aware that we are discussing pioneer work, which by its very nature can only be provisional. Okay. Just as the mother seems to be the first carrier of the projection-making factor for the son. Look. Just as, this is what I was saying. Just as the mother seems to be the first carrier of the projection-making factor on the son, right? Like your mother is the first victim of your projections. The image of the great mother that you had in your psyche, you're projecting that image onto your own mother. She's the first victim. She's the first carrier of your projection-making factor. So is the father for the daughter, right? The same thing goes for fathers and daughters. Practical experience of these relationships is made up of many individual cases presenting all kinds of variations on the same basic theme. A concise description of them can therefore be no more than schematic. Okay. Woman is compensated by a masculine element, and therefore her unconscious has, so to speak, a masculine imprint. This results in a considerable psychological difference between men and women. And accordingly, I have called the projection-making factor in women the animus, which means mind or spirit. The animus corresponds to the paternal logos, just as the anima corresponds to the maternal eros. But I do not wish or intend to give these two intuitive concepts too specific a definition. I use eros and logos merely as conceptual aids to describe the fact that women's consciousness is characterized more by the connective quality of eros than by the discrimination and cognitive associated with the logos. In men, eros, the function of relationship, is usually less developed than logos. In women, on the other hand, eros is an expression of their true nature, while their logos is often only a regrettable accident. It gives rise to misunderstandings and annoying interpretations in the family circle among friends. This is because it consists of opinions instead of reflections, and by opinions I mean a priori assumptions that lay claim to absolute truth. Such assumptions, as everyone knows, can be extremely irritating. As an animus is partial to argument, he can best be seen at work in disputes where both parties know they're right. Men can argue in a very womanish way too, when their anima possessed and have thus been transformed into the animus of their own anima. With them, the question becomes one of personal vanity and touchiness, as if they were females. With women, it is a question of power, whether of truth or justice or some other ism. For the dressmaker and hairdresser have already taken care of their vanity. This guy's losing me. This guy's losing me. Hold up. The father, the total sum of conventional opinions, always plays a great role in a feminine argumentation. Look what this guy is saying. This guy is crazy. The father, the sum total of conventional opinions, always plays a great role in female argumentation. Okay? No matter how friendly and obligating a woman's eros may be, no logic on earth can shake her if she is ridden by the animus. Often the man has the feeling, and he's not altogether wrong, that only seduction or a beating or rape, would have the necessary power of persuasion. Wait. Time out. Time out, what the... Mr. Jung, what is going on? No matter how friendly obligating a woman's eros may be, no logic on earth can shake her if she is ridden by the animus. Often the man has the feeling, and he's not altogether wrong, that only seduction or a beating or rape would have the necessary power of persuasion. He is unaware that this highly dramatic situation would instantly come to a banal and unexciting end if he were to quit the field and let a second woman carry on the battle. His wife, for instance, if she herself is not the fierce war horse. This sound idea seldom or never occurs to him, because no man can converse with an animus for 5 minutes without becoming the victim of his own anima. Anyone who still had enough sense of humor to listen objectively to the ensuing dialogue would be staggered by the vast number of commonplaces, misapplied truisms, cliches from newspapers and novels, shop-soiled platitudes of every description interspersed with the vulgar abuse and brain-splitting lack of logic. It is a dialogue which, irrespective of its participants, is repeated millions and millions of times in all languages of the world and always remains essentially the same. This is insane. This is insane. What Jung is saying really here, in this paragraph, I think, is he's saying let's say when a man argues with a woman, they are not so much using their logic, they are both possessed by the anima and the animus. So anima is let's say in a man, anima is the feminine part of his psyche, and animus in a woman is the masculine part of her psyche. And so in some abstract sense, I feel like these anima and animus, that are fighting with each other. You know what I mean? Like at a deep unconscious level, my anima is fighting with her animus. My feminine part of my psyche is fighting with the masculine part of her psyche. And because at that unconscious, deep, fundamental level, those female and male energies are fighting with each other, me and this girl are simply victims of these two deeply unconscious and almost divine powers. And because they are powers that reside in the collective unconscious, they reside in the psyche of every human being, and that's why in every human being this same conversation happens again and again and again and again. That's what Jung is saying in the last part, right? Like it is a dialogue which, irrespective of participants, is repeated millions and millions of times in all languages of the world, and always remains essentially the same. So it's like, it's not that I'm fighting with a woman, it's that my feminine energy in me, the anima, is fighting with her animus. the feminine in me is fighting with the masculine in her. And so I feel like at some deep unconscious level, these two divine powers are fighting with each other. And me and this woman are simply communicators for these divine powers, right? Like we're both victims in some sense. Because a man, because when you argue with a woman, sometimes you just feel like there is no way to convince her of anything. And when a woman fights with a man, she often feels like, I mean, this guy's an idiot, right? Like he just doesn't understand what I'm saying. This singular fact, okay, is due to the following circumstances. Okay. Why does this happen? Let's see. When animus and anima meet, the animus draws his sword of power and the anima ejects her poison of illusion and seduction. The outcome may not always be negative, since the two are equally likely to fall in love. Damn. A special instance of love at first sight. Dude, there is a lot going on here. There's a lot going on. Right? Like, my anima and her animus might fall in love with each other because those two are in love. No, me and this girl are in love too. The language of love is of astonishing uniformity. Look. The language of love is of astonishing uniformity. It's almost the same in every human. Using the well-known formulas with the utmost devotion and fidelity, so that once again the two partners find themselves in a banal collective situation, right? In a banal collective situation, something that happens to every human being, and it's insanely uniform. It's the same in every human being. Yet they live in the illusion that they are related to one another in a most individual way. This is important. This is important. Like, imagine I fall in love with a girl. What Jung is saying is, it could just be that when I interact with a girl, the anima in me falls in love with the animus in her. And because those two are in love, then me and this girl end up in this collective situation where we think we love each other in the most individual way. But Jung is saying, no. What individual way? You crazy or what? You fell in love with her because these two energies at the deep collective level, those two energies somehow matched for whatever reason. And therefore you two fell in love. There is nothing individual about that. There is nothing unique about her, right? Like, she's different. She's not. She's that girl, I love her because you don't even know why you love her. You don't even know why you fell for her. You think you do, you don't. Jung is saying that these decisions are taking place at a deeply unconscious and collective level. Domains which you have no control over. Absolutely. And that makes sense because when you fall in love with someone, you don't really choose it. Like, have you paid attention? Like, sometimes you see a woman fall in love with like the most diabolical man ever. And if she were using her logic, she would never fall in love with him. But she did fall in love with him, which means that love is a completely irrational and illogical thing. She is not thinking, she's not making the decision. Somebody else is making that decision. Somebody at a deeply collective and unconscious level is making that decision for her. Right? Like sometimes you see a really successful woman who is intelligent in many ways fall in love with a guy who is a complete bum. And the fact that she's in love that's not fake. She really is in love, right? And sometimes a lot of the nice guys, successful guys will start hating on her, right? But in reality, we have to admit that love is a phenomenon that we don't really understand. At some point, we have to admit we don't understand how it works. And Jung is saying is that you're not at all making that decision. Somebody at the deep unconscious level is making that decision. In both its primitive and its negative aspects, the anima/animus relationship is always full of animosity. It is emotional and hence collective. Affects lower the level of the relationship and bring it closer to the common instinctual basis, which no longer has anything individual about it. Very often the relationship runs its course heedless of its human performance, who afterward do not know what happened to them. I mean, look. Right? Common instinctual basis which no longer has anything individual about it. Very often, The relationship runs its course heedless of its human performance, who afterwards do not know what happened to them. This is like in a theater. And like these unconscious players are like controlling you, and like you're like I forgot how they call it in English. You're like a toy for them. I think the Greeks had a saying that we are the playground for the gods, and I think that's what they meant. The gods are like these animals, the anima, all of these archetypes of the collective unconscious that are the gods. They are doing their own thing, and we are just a playground for them. We are like toys for them, right? And this is something that what you say, saying there is nothing individual about it. The fact you fell for her, there is nothing individual about that. Nothing. It's a game. And it's a game over which you have no control. Whereas the cloud of animosity surrounding the man is composed chiefly of sentimentality and resentment, in woman it expresses what? Whereas the cloud of animosity surrounding the man is composed chiefly of sentimentality and resentment, in woman it expresses itself in the form of opinionated views, interpretations, insinuations, and misconstructions, which all have the purpose, sometimes attained, of severing the relationship between the two human beings. The woman, like the man, becomes wrapped in the veil of illusions by her demon familiar, and as the daughter who alone understands her father, that is eternally right in everything, she is translated to the land of sheep, where she is put to graze by the shepherd on her soul, the animus. I'll be honest, I didn't understand the damn thing here. Let's see. Whereas the cloud of animosity surrounding the man is composed chiefly of sentimentality and resentment. Right? Men are usually very emotional and resentful. I agree. Men resent a lot, yeah. Like I did so much for you, you still left me, right? In women, it expresses itself in the form of opinionated views, interpretations, insinuations, and misconstructions, which all have the purpose, sometimes attained, of severing the relationship between two human beings. The woman, like the man, becomes wrapped in a veil of illusions by her demon familiar. And as the daughter who alone understands her father, that is eternally right in everything, she is translated to the land of sheep, where she is put to graze by the shepherd of her soul. Okay, let's keep reading. Like the anima, the animus too has a positive aspect. Through the figure of the father, he expresses not only conventional opinion, but equally what we call spirit, the philosophical or religious ideas in particular, or rather the attitude resulting from them. Thus, the animus is a psychobomb, a mediator between the conscious and the unconscious, and a personification of the latter. The animus is a personification of the latter, right? The animus is like a bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, and it's a personification of the unconscious. Just as the anima becomes, through integration, the eros of consciousness, so the animus becomes a logos. And in the same way that the anima gives relationship and relatedness to a man's consciousness, the animus gives to a woman's consciousness a capacity for reflection, deliberation, and self-knowledge. Right? Like in a man, men are usually masculine, and so they think logically, but the anima in them helps them bring about certain feminine traits, because femininity is important, not just for women, but for men also. Because without femininity, men would be, like if you ever meet a guy who has no femininity, he's very rigid. He's extremely rigid. Like there's something bad about him. And if you ever meet a woman who has no masculinity, it's also bad. Because in life you need masculinity. As a woman, you need masculinity to some extent. So what Jung is saying is that these things are, so to speak, positive in some sense also. The effect of anima and animus on the ego is in principle the same. This effect is extremely difficult to eliminate because in the first place it is uncommonly strong and immediately fills the ego personality with an unshakable feeling of rightness and righteousness. In the second place, the cause of the effect is projected and appears to lie in objective situations. Maybe we should stop here. There's still a lot more. Let's stop here and then we'll continue later.